Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to ISAP 2025 Thematic Track 6. How do socio-ecological production landscapes and seascapes, or SEPLS, promote the Nexus approach, integrating theory and practice? My name is Koji Miwa, a research manager at Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, or IGES. I will moderate this session. This session is co-organized by the Ministry of Environment of Japan and United Nations University Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability, UNU-IAS. First of all, I'd like to announce the logistical information. This session will be done in English, but there is a simultaneous interpretation into Japanese. So please allow me to briefly explain to the Japanese audience before starting the session. 皆さん、こんにちは。本セッション司会進行を務めさせていただきます、IGES の宮と申します。本セッションにおきましては、登壇者英語のみで、使用させていただきます。ただし、日本語への同時通訳がございますので、日本語でお聞きになりたい方は、Zoom の通訳機能をクリックし、日本語をご選択ください。どうぞよろしくお願いします。Alright, in this session, we also have the Q&A function. So if you have any questions, please use this function. However, please note that we may not be able to answer all your questions due to the limited time. And if your question is directed to a particular speaker, please mention it in the question. And all the presentation files for this thematic track are already available at our website. So please check the page. And we also send you some information related to our content through chat during session. So please check that chat box as well. So that's all from the logistical information. So let's begin. First of all, we'd like to start with the opening remarks by Professor Kazuhiko Takeuchi, President of IGES. So over to you, Takeuchi-sensei.
Thank you, Miya-san. Hello, everybody. The loss of biodiversity is one of the critical environmental issues we have faced alongside climate change and pollution. To achieve a sustainable world and meet the targets set out in the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the 2050 Vision of Biodiversity, which is living in harmony with nature. We must make drastic changes to the way we live and to take a holistic approach with all sectors and stakeholders working together towards a shared goal. At the 10th Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity, or CBD COP10, held in Aichi, Nagoya, in Japan, in 2010, the Ministry of the Environment of Japan and the UNU-IAS proposed the Satoyama Initiative. This initiative aims to promote a global effort to create societies in harmony with nature, based on the Satoyama and Satoumi models in Japan, also known as socio-ecological production landscapes and seascapes, or SEPLS for short. At the same time, the International Partnership for the Satoyama Initiative, or IPBES in short, was established to promote the initiative's work and facilitate knowledge sharing among its members, initially comprising 51 organizations. This figure has grown to 328 from around the world, including public, private, academic, and grassroots sectors. Under the IPBES, the Satoyama Development Mechanism, or SDM, was established by the Japanese Ministry of the Environment, UNU-IAS, and IGES. The SDM is a financing mechanism that facilitates the implementation of activities by IPBES members. Since 2013, it was funded 69 projects in 29 countries. Today, we are going to discuss how SEPLS can promote cross-cutting approaches between the elements of biodiversity, food, water, health, and climate change in a synergistic way. To this end, we have invited experts and SDM implementators from various countries. I hope they will have a fruitful discussion and provide valuable insights. With that, I will conclude my opening remarks. Thank you very much and enjoy this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Takeuchi. So before inviting today's speakers from around the world, I'd like to introduce you to the framework and key points of this session. So before that, I'd like to share today's agenda. So now I'm starting the frame of the session, and then we're going to have 2 case presentations from Ghana and India, and then we will have panel discussion. So for the background of the session, so we are now facing the environmental crisis, including climate change, the loss of biodiversity, and pollution. And nature is the basis of our life. Thus, halting the trend of decline of nature or the loss of biodiversity is an urgent task, or we also call it transformative change. At the IPBES plenary, the 11th plenary of the IPBES in December 2024, the 2 IPBES assessments were adopted, which are Nexus and transformative change. And Nexus approach is also mentioned in the transformative change assessment as a way of transformative approach. So this session will discuss how landscape approaches, especially Satoyama Satomi, or socio-ecological production landscape and seascapes, or SEPLS, embody the Nexus approach. So first of all, what is landscape approach? So it takes an integrated view of the relationship between society, culture, and ecosystems, and emphasizes elements such as the involvement of diverse stakeholders and regional autonomy. So it's not just one single way, but try to include various stakeholders or sectors and so on. And what is Satoyama or SEPLS? So it is secondary natural areas that Japanese people regarded as Satoyama or Satomi. So those are the places where people and nature coexist in harmony, contributing to the maintenance of biodiversity, while sustainably supporting people's lives and prosperity. So those areas were traditionally formed through the practice of sustainable agriculture, forestry, and fisheries in Japan, resulting in people living in harmony with nature, which is also the corresponds to the 2050 biodiversity vision. And in such places, human production activities are part of ecosystems, enhancing ecosystem services. But these forms are do not only exist in Japan, but are found in other parts of the world. So we do not call it only Satoyama or Satomi, but also SEPLS in more scientific point of view. So we define SEPLS as dynamic mosaics of managed socio-ecological systems, producing a bundle of ecosystem services for human well-being. And it's not only based on traditional knowledge, but also it mixes with modern science. And biodiversity is a key element for the resilience and function of the landscapes and seascapes. So this is an image of Satoyama. So people do not only produce rice in the paddy field, but in such places, birds come, many insects thrive. And then people also use foods in a sustainable way, in a way that the other animal species or plant species can grow and then thrive. So in such places, nature and people live in harmony. This is also same way in the Satomi area. So it has been existed in rural areas in many countries. So we are trying to consider these traditional forms, or also the indigenous and local knowledge, and then combining it with modern science. So this time, as we mentioned, we are also trying to think about Nexus approach. So first of all, I'd like to introduce what Nexus is. So it is trying to understand and address the complex and interconnected character of the crises and challenges of biodiversity loss, water availability and quality, food insecurity, health risks, and climate change. So decisions to address them are often taken in isolation in conventional way, but it leads to potential misalignment or unplanned trade-offs, unintended consequences. So Nexus approach is trying to tackle this kind of issue. So Nexus is interlinkages among two or more elements, sectors, or systems. So as you can see in the figure, all these 5 elements of Nexus is interconnected. And then there are also interdependencies between sectors and systems. So we have to try to see in a holistic manner to develop integrated and adaptive decisions to maximize synergies and minimize the trade-offs among them. So, but when we are not able to do that in Nexus approach, we call it often siloed approach, which address issues in isolation and without regard to interlinkages. So this is an example of the Nexus archetype. So for example, if you try to implement in food fast way, you may to produce or increase food production, you may deforest or cut down forest and expand agricultural lands. In that way, you can improve the food productivity. However, in that way, you can reduce carbon mitigation function by forests, or biodiversity quality, and also water quality, and so on. But if you look at the nexus-oriented, nature-oriented nexus or balanced nexus, it's improving all the elements. So we are trying to achieve this kind of way, and then trying to see how SEPLS can promote such approaches. And the Nexus assessment also introduced these response options. And then we try to see how much SEPLS approach can cover these Nexus response options. So first, in this red line shows that the landscape approach. So maybe not only SEPLS, but all kinds of landscape approach can cover these options. And I also tried to see how much SEPLS can cover the response options. So these brown lines can cover some of the response options. And then the blue lines have the potentially possible to be covered by the SEPLS approach. So this is not empirically studied, but it was just done by the expert judge. But we see the potential of SEPLS to promote Nexus approach. And to do so, we also need a Nexus governance, which promote integrative, holistic, and transdisciplinary framings and inclusive approaches for diverse after engagement, and also considers equity and justice alongside accountability, and enhance mechanism and processes for collaboration and coordination across scales and sectors, and adaptively flexible and experimental approaches to learn from success and to scale these solutions. So these are the things that we are trying to see from the case presentations from Ghana and India. So we have, as Professor Takeuchi mentioned, Satoyama Development Mechanisms, SDMs. We have implemented a number of projects. And then now we are trying to ask two cases how much they have been able to achieve their project outcomes, and then how much they were possibly cover the Nexus response options, and how much it was the way of governance was also the implementing the ways that Nexus assessment showed. So first, I'd like to invite Mr. Yao and then Ms. Pamela to share the cases from the Ghana. And also, secondly, I will invite Dr. Siba from the Bello Institute of Technology from the cases for the case of India. So let me invite Yao and Pamela first. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Koji, for the very comprehensive presentation, and it's opened our eyes to exactly what we're going to talk about. My name is Yao Oseusu. I work with Conservation Alliance International, which is a non-governmental organization, basically looking at the same issues that we are talking about, making sure that we use biodiversity sustainably without compromising the health of the ecosystem, the very things we are talking about today. My colleague Pamela is also around, will help to address some of the issues and answer some of the questions that might come up as a result of the presentation. Additionally, there are other colleagues also with us in the room here who also support when it comes to the panel discussion. So that is that as part of the introduction. Now let's go to the title. The title of our presentation is Safeguarding the Ecological Integrity of Atiwa, of the Atiwa Forest Reserve through the adoption of best conservation and agricultural practices. My next slide, my presentation will focus primarily on sharing some ideas about the landscape, and then we'll look at the goals and objectives of the program that we implemented within the landscape. We also see the Nexus integration in practice, and then we'll look at measuring the success and the progress so far, and how far we have scaled up the project, and finally we'll come to the conclusion. Next, we are talking about Atiwa Forest Reserve. This is an area which is of great importance, not only to Ghana, but also to the global community because of its uniqueness. It has about 30% of the remaining forests in the eastern region of Ghana. and is considered as a very important biodiversity area, landscape. It's also been reckoned as international bird life designation too, which means that it's a very important area. It has a lot of endemic species, and we have 3 major rivers running through them, which means that it's a major source of 3 rivers for Ghana. We targeted one community. You can see the picture of the community on the right, called Obuo. Obuo means stone, so it means that, I mean, the area is quite rocky, and this community is very close to the forest. It means that the health of that forest has a lot of implication for the health of the community. The community is just about 1 kilometer away from the forest, and it has a population of more than thousands, about 1,332 persons. 52% of them are women. And this population primarily depends on agriculture as a major livelihood. And they produce cocoa, food crops, and other spices. Other families also depend on non-timber forest products. Next slide. As I've already indicated, the forest harbors 3 major streams. Densu, which supplies water to Accra, Ayinsu, which supplies a lot of water to central region of Ghana, and the Birim, which is the major source of water for the eastern region. And that explains why that landscape is extremely very important. Again, I've also indicated that the economy of the area is primarily agrarian. It means that they depend on agriculture for their livelihood, and almost more than 90% of the population either are involved in cocoa production, which is a major commodity in Ghana, or they produce oil palm. Almost all the households also produce food crops like plantain, cassava, and vegetables. Now, there are also a small number of families that depend on non-timber forest products for their livelihood. There we find in the forest landscape fruits, leaves, medicinal plants, and firewood. All these come from the forest. So you see that this forest is extremely very important. Notwithstanding, the forest landscape is facing a lot of threats from forest degradation, unsustainable farming practices, overdependence on non-timber forest products, and limited access for women farmers, leading to high post-harvest losses. As a matter of fact, the women in these areas are the ones who are directly involved in food production. You find that the 3 crops, cocoa, oil palm, area production are dominated by men. But when it comes to food production like plantain, cassava, and vegetables, they are dominated by women. Therefore, and these activities take a lot of land. So if we want to improve the health of that ecosystem, the women become very important. Next slide. So you have pictures of the landscape and shows how beautiful the place is. On the extreme right, you have the picture of the Obuho community, and then we also have oil palm plantations surrounding the community. Again, we see cocoa drying on the left on raised mat. Usually when they have produced the cocoa and they have fermented and extracted the seeds, they dry them from 8 to 12 days in the sun to give it the right chocolate flavor and remove any form of molding. So you see a woman is drying her cocoa, and periodically within the day, she passes her hands through to stir to ensure that all the beans are uniformly dried. On my left, on my right hand, you also find that the cocoa, after it's been aggregated, buying agencies, they put all together, but the process involves first testing the quality of the cocoa beans, making sure that the water content is right, about 12% or so, and then they put all that together and dry them, after which they bag and store for the pots. When it comes to community livelihoods, I've indicated plantain. So on my left, you also find women who are involved in production of plantain. And basically, this is a cooperative. A lot of the women have come together to produce commodities for scale. And then on my right, you find another picture of a woman who is also processing a non-timber forest products, which is a sponge. And they pick them from the forest and then process them and sell them. And sometimes they use some of them at home, domestically used. It's a very popular non-timber forest products. Next slide on project activity. In respect of this project, trying to make sure that production takes place within an environment that will not compromise the health of the ecosystem. The first thing we did was the community entry. And usually every community has opinion leaders, traditional leaders, and other senior members. So what we do is that when you go to the community, you first meet this group of leadership and introduce the project to them. So you see on our immediate left, we have a picture of our staff meeting the community leadership and the women who are involved in the production. Again, after the initial meeting, we will also meet with the individual members of the community to understand what they are doing. As a matter of fact, we have, before we adopted the Nexus approach, we use an approach known as the community level initiative. The community level initiative simply means that communities are already finding ways to ensure sustainability. So you will learn from them and incorporate their activities into your program. This helps easy uptake and sustainability. So next on project activity, after the initial meeting with the leadership and the women, you will then be able to identify who are the change agents. It is always important to find out who are the change agents, because we don't want the project phase to end with the funding phase. We want the project to continue. That's what we are talking about, sustainability. So what we do is that we meet the individual groups to identify their governance systems and identify gaps that they will need. I mean, the training gaps that we will need to implement. And therefore, we need to understand their own agricultural practices and assess how it is impacting on biodiversity and ecosystem within the area. Once we understand this, then it helps us to know the kind of training we ought to implement. So on the left side of the picture, the screen, you find that we are meeting the various women groups to understand and also to promote the project activity. So the first thing that we do training, it's really important that we understand the governance. We need to improve how they govern the cooperative and improve upon their governance structure. So sometimes what we do is that we introduce new technologies like WhatsApp and Facebook discussions and all that. This is to help them improve communication. So we need to really understand what is happening in order to help them. And then part of the project, after that, part of the project is to do afforestation and then restoration activities. So what we do is that we help them identify areas that have been degraded, and then the areas that have been degraded, we raise seedlings and then improve
Okay, you stopped sharing, so maybe you can you do that again?
All right.
Yes, it's coming.
Good. Where it's coming, all right. So I don't know where it got off, but I just said that the first thing we do is to make sure that we have a meeting with the community leaders and the women groups. That's the first thing we do. Secondly, we do an assessment to find out what the problems within the communities are, including for the women's group. What is the governance structure? How do they govern the group? And then we identify the gaps so that we strengthen the groups, sometimes even with technology. Then the third is that we identify areas that we need to resolve, because they know that the health of that forest would also impact on the household income and the health of the agricultural production system. Once we have done it, one of the activities we implemented was to restore degraded areas and plant trees within the area. So you find women in the pictures, women planting trees on my right, and then women trying to incorporate tree crop production in their agricultural activities. Now, talking about the objectives, the activities and the outcomes, the first one major activity was to strengthen the women cooperative with leadership training and resource government, because without that, it will be extremely difficult for the cooperative to be very strong. So that's one of the weaknesses we identify to help improve the governance structure. And the next is to create awareness about the value of biodiversity. Sometimes when they are closer to biodiversity, they may not value it. So you need to create the awareness. And then to ensure sustainability, we also incorporated good agricultural practices in the agricultural production landscape, including the use of integrated pest management, agroforestry. All these are part of our activities to ensure sustainability. And finally, we also link the women to markets. Sometimes when they produce, they are not able to access good markets. And so the problem is that some of the food goes to waste. But once we have linked them up to markets, then the markets will determine how the commodity should be processed for the uptakers. About 30 women were trainers of trainers. We use the women themselves to train the others. So the first thing we did was to train the women themselves to be able to train others. And we create awareness about the value of biodiversity. And almost about 60% of farmers have adopted sustainable practices. When you go there now, you see the marked improvement in the agricultural landscape. And there's a reduction in the use of pesticides. They have now opted for the integrated pest management, where they are applying all sorts of agricultural practices to reduce the adverse impacts of agriculture on biodiversity. And in the process, their livelihoods have been enhanced. So if household incomes have gone up. And obviously this next slide, this is in response to our response option on agroecology. And this is not the only response. There are other response options that fit into our project, such as the biodiversity response option, food response option, water response option, health response option, and climate response option. The nexus in practice is that with respect to biodiversity, we've planted a number of trees, native trees within the landscape. This has helped to improve farm management in totality. Again, because of the use of integrated pest management, pollution of water has been reduced dramatically, and a lot of the farmers have adopted this method of production, thereby improving the health of the ecosystem. We have also promoted good agricultural practices, which has now resulted in marked improvement, more than about 30% improvement in production and productivity, and reduction in post-harvest losses. Climate change, as a result of restoration and agroforestry, carbon sequestration and soil fertilities have all gone up. Water bodies have now been clean compared to the past, and we have also strengthened community. We have strengthened the cooperative, the women cooperative, so they are stronger now than in the past. Next slide. So we have used the integrated, holistic, and interdisciplinary approach to solve problems and improve biodiversity conservation within the area. There is equity, fair sharing of the resources alongside accountability. With respect to contribution to GBF, next slide, we have contributed to the target 2, which is ecosystem restoration. We are looking at target 3, which is 30 by 30, target 22, which is equity in biodiversity, and target 23. All these are being catered for by this project. Additionally, when we come to the SDGs, goal 15 and goal 5 are also heavily considered. And how did we measure progress? The number of seedlings that were planted in farms to help in climate change, the increase in integrated pest management. The women cooperatives are also linked to markets, which is making the gender inclusiveness more prevalent. And finally, we have reduced post-harvest losses. The synergies, we're talking about restoration and agroforestry. There's integrated pest management, good agricultural practices. Women have been linked to markets. The remaining challenges are the cost of adoption of new methods. Sometimes it's costly. Convenience of old methods, sometimes the tendency for them to go to old methods, and the weak extension services within the area. Part of the lessons, next slide, we have learned is that promoting sustainable livelihoods can guarantee ecosystem health. Empowering women leads to socio-economic improvement of rural livelihoods, and sustainable agricultural practices protects environment and ecosystem. And there's a possibility for scaling up and then replication. The success is that more commodities are being produced, the women are strengthened, and then NTFP production is also strengthened. And then finally, we have post-harvest losses have gone down by about 10%, and household incomes have gone up between 15 to 29%, which is an indication that the project has been quite successful. We thank SDM, we thank everyone who has supported this initiative, and we are happy to continue to collaborate and learn from other initiatives. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ayo, for sharing your project, and then we could witness how much your project could cover the Nexus response options also in a synergistic way. So we could see the interlinkages among the different Nexus elements, and then also the inclusiveness, like especially for the women, the capacity building of women were also very important factor of this project. So we would like to move to the next case presenter, Dr. Siva Ramamurthy from Bello Institute of Technology, India. Dr. Siva, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Koji. So I hope my slide is visible now. Can you ensure?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, let me put full slide so that. Well, good afternoon, good evening, because we have different parts of the world. And it's really a great pleasure to give our presentation as a case study for this important meeting on International Forum for Sustainable Asia and Pacific, ISAP 2025. We got the project from SDM, the titled Developing a Sustainable Socio-Economy Through the Restoration of Sacred Groves of Malayali Community in Kalrayan Hills of South India. And myself, I am Professor Siva Ramamurthy, the principal investigator of this project and former dean of the School of Biotechnology from Vellore Institute of Technology. So let me give the background so that the people here can understand better about the terminology like a sacred groves and conservation and so on. So this project mainly focusing on sacred groves. Sacred groves are small patches of forest or vegetation that protected by the local community due to their religious and cultivated significance. So it's a natural habit of the particular community. They protect because of their religious practice and belief, and which is comes under SEPL, that is a socio-ecological production landscape, as a repository for various Ayurvedic medicine. As you perhaps aware, India is one among the 17 mega diversity countries in the world, and we have 4 hotspots. And we do have lots of traditional medicine that including Ayurvedic, Siddha, Unani. So these sacred groves were part of Ayurvedic medicine. And for our studies, we have chosen the Kalrayan Hills of South India. As I mentioned, India has a very huge biodiversity, and we can classify into 2 major Ghats, Eastern Ghats and Western Ghats. So this study area comes under Eastern Ghats, which is covering approximately 1095 kilometers. And it is between the 3 spectacular ranges of 3 hills like Pachamalai, Jawadu, and Shavrai Hills. As far as Kalrayan Hills is concerned, which is a very tall hill, let's say like 2,000 to 3,000 feet with the tall, lush with biodiversity. So here the people, the tribal community is known as a Malayali tribe. There are 2 groups of Malayali tribes are there. Accordingly, they call it as a Periya Malayali, which is a big Malayali, and another one is Kanchi Mandalam Malayali. And in fact, these people, these tribal people use the plants from the deep forest, whatever it is available in their nearby their surroundings, and deep forest for their food, medicine, and as well as for various economic uses, that including preparation of a net, mat, and rope making, and so on. And along with that, as you can see from the right side of this picture, you can see here that the people are worshipping, they are deities of the Kalrayan Hills, worshipped by the Malayali tribal community. And these sacred groves, as I was mentioning, is part of SEPLS, aiding the livelihoods of this community. So this is the picture of the Malayali communities, where you can see the women who is sheep hoarding, and on the right side you can see the people in the farm, and below you can see here the people are worshipping, which is a religious thing of those Malayali tribes. But unfortunately, what happens now, there is a huge threat for the sacred groves, which obviously results in the loss of biodiversity. What you are showing, what we are seeing here is the newspaper clippings from the India, and you can see that an Indian mining is eating up the sacred forest grove. This is one threatening information. Then similarly, you can also see that there is sacred groves on the decline as per the studies. And because of the sacred grove loss, there is a climate change and other biodiversity loss, which is also happening. So you can conclude from this slide that sacred groves play a very, very important role with respect to the biodiversity. And keep in mind, we have done this particular study with the support of SDM and IGES. So what happens here is there is a present status of the sacred groves is not really a positive. And in fact, on the verge of disruptions due to unhindered human interference for the land, wood, and many other resources. And there is also a encroachment and conservation of sacred groves into agricultural land and other construction activities. So here you can see the picture where it has been thrown out, those sacred groves, and in that place people are cultivating, which become a monoculture. And most importantly, it belongs to only the elder generation, and the younger generation is not at all interested to know about the sacred groves, and they are trying to relocate their place from the forest region to the cities. And unfortunately, again, lack of legal policies and community participation to protect and conserve these valuable sacred groves. So that is the present status of Malayali communities in Kalrayan Hills. In fact, they belongs to the scheduled tribal groups, and the basic communities like a road and communication, sanitations are very, very limited, and the education is also very poor. and as a result, they are in socio-economic status. Keep in mind, the aim of our project was to improve the community resilience and conservation of the threatened flora through restoration of sacred groves of Malayali communities in Kalrain Hills of South India, and also evaluating Nexus interaction through the community-led area conservation approach. So these are all some of the objectives of our project. As you can see, there are 4 or 5 objectives. The very first objective is to map and document the threatened flora of Kalrain Hills. And second objective is to conserve and protect sacred groves and sthala vriksha in Malayali sacred groves. Then to establish a very, very important and endemic plants under in vitro by the in vitro conservation method, priority given only to the threatened species. Then restore the threatened plants in the form of garden, what we call it as a vrikshavali. So that will give the people to utilize that, and also to give the awareness about the sustainable socio-economic of the sacred groves in collaboration with the Malayali community of Kalrain Hills. Then finally, we also prepared the modules with our collaborator from University of Philippines, Professor Inocencio Boot. And this module can also be used for the other researchers to take this for further studies. Now, what you can see is about the cascading, tools. And in fact, the objective of today's meeting is about Nexus. And we observed the cascading negative effects on the Nexus elements due to the decline of sacred groves, and cascading impact or observed when action on one element results on the chain of the negative impact. So that's the thing. So if you make in touch with the one element, and obviously there is a change with respect to the other one. So this table illustrates the response options related to this table, this slide shows the the flow chart shows the interlinkage among the Nexus elements in the context of sacred groves. So to summarize, restoration of sacred groves will have positive outcome on Nexus element, such as halting and reversing biodiversity loss, as well as improving water quality and food security, and improving with the human health outcomes, and which can helps for the climate change. So this is a very, very important slide. So as you can see here, everything is interlinked. Everything is interlinked, and if there is a decline in sacred grove, there can be a high possibility that there can be a soil erosion, or there can be a water cycle loss, or there can be a human disconnection from the nature. So at the end, all together can result with the loss of biodiversity, which are the component of the biodiversity, water, food, health, and climate change. So this is the table illustrate the response option related to each objectives and their impacts on the Nexus elements in the context of our study. So each column represent, here you can see the the biodiversity, water, health, and climate in order, and response option shows here the outcome which aided in the management of one or more elements, which can be area-based thing. Okay, so it can be area-based conservation, forest landscape restoration, integrated landscape and seascape approaches, and right-based approaches. So here the continuation of the response action. So in summary, what we can say from this slide is that the restoration of sacred groves complements the protection of ecosystem, and to secure the water, food, health, while enhancing the biodiversity and mitigating the climate change. So here you can see the objective where and all our sacred groves can play an important role. So Nexus govern approach provide the more synergetic and holistic and transdisciplinary framings of the problems and solution. And of course, it can also enhance the mechanism and processes for collaboration as well as coordination across scales and sectors. And it's also influencing the adaptive, reflexive, and experimental approach to learn the success to scale this solution. So keep in mind, in fact, our objectives, as I was mentioning early, there were 4 or 5 objectives that we have done. So the first objective was to map and document the threatened medicinal plant diversity in the sacred groves. So we made series of seasonal field visit across a different season. And we also consulted with the traditional healers, local botanists, and also the community elder. And we also identify the map using GPS, and detailed inventory threatened medicinal plants were also compiled. And in addition to that, whatever the plants that we have collected, we maintained the herbarium for some of the collected sample. So this is our experimental sites in Kalrayan Hills, which comes under Tamil Nadu, especially in the district called Kallakurichi, which is the area of the project site is 63,000 hectares. And here you can see the topography of elevation and topography of the Kalrayan Hills. And these are all some of the glimpse of the medicinal plants as well as the other plants, which is reported by the community of sacred groves. There are so many plants. Just for the glimpse, I have shown you in this slide few of the plants, and the list goes on. And as I was mentioning earlier, we also maintain the herbarium. We have a herbarium center here. So we are documenting the herbarium sheets of each of that one. Then the next task to us is to assess the conservation status of the threats to the sacred groves. And we apply the IUCN Red List category for this criteria for the assessment. And in fact, we have identified that there are so many endangered species which were present in Kalrayan Hills. Say, for instance, Pterolobium hexapectulum, which is known as a white bristilo climber, which is known to have lots of medicinal property, but unfortunately, due to deforestation and land use, they've been lost. And similarly, there is a Heidelgaria populifolia, which is another important IUCN species, which is a critically endangered one. That is also lost here, and approximately 20 trees are known to exist in eastern Ghats of this region that we have identified. And the third one, just I'm showing you, is the Rubia cordifolia, and which is also regionally threatened as per the IUCN, which is also exhausted because of the overuse since it's been used as a medicinal in Ayurveda and so on. And the last one example is Santalum album, and which is a vulnerable category as per IUCN. And people here using the hardwood and valuable oil because they are doing this as illegal logging and smuggling, and habitat destruction is one of the reasons for the species to lost. So we had a lot of discussion with the tribal community. This picture shows, or this slide shows, myself, as well as on the left side you can see my co-principal investigator, who visit often to this place and interact with the elder people, and we try to identify the medicinal plants. And in fact, some of the key drivers for the population decline that we identified as a habitat degradation, and also due to the land use changes and unsustainable harvesting practices. And the next step should be to document all those ritual carried out by those people. In fact, as I mentioned, sacred groups is nothing but a myth or belief on worshipping the trees. And there are lots and lots of the traditional rituals. And here you can see some of the glimpse how they give respect to the sacred groves, and also how they worship the sacred groves in the hill of Kalrayan Hills by the tribal community called the Malayalis. And they also ritual range from seasonal offering, onset of monsoon, to life cycle ceremonies to the forest deities. And as you can see from this picture, they offer food to the god, and they believe that they will protect them against the natural thing. And in fact, which is also a sort of belief with only the elder generation. But over the period, the younger generation shows declining interest and indicating they were not bothered to conserve this sort of the plants. So hence we made a lot of interview with those people to understand about TEK, that is a traditional ethnobotanical knowledge as well as conservation practice of that. And we asked several questions. Say, for instance, here we put a few questions to read. We asked them like how important are sacred groups in their community and cultural religious practice. And we also asked the questions like, what resources do they or their family depending on the sacred groups, whether they are using for the medicinal plants or for the honey or for fodder or as a timber and so on. So like that, we prepared lots and lots of questions, and last 5 years, how they are observing the sacred groups diminishing and so on. So these are all some of the questions that we interacted with the people, and we documented all those things. The results was very, very interesting. I'm not going to show you all the results due to time constraints. Just want to tell you that the highlights on the community, depending on the livelihoods across the different villages, it shows that 62% of the people shows it's depending the sacred groups only as a medicinal plants or as a non-timber forest product. Another very interesting state that, their village, in fact, they gave the highest importance among the different villages. Only 1 or 2 village pay the highest importance for the sacred groups. Rest of the villages, they are not showing much importance. And the reason when we are asking, they say that it is because of the urbanization as well as encroachment levels found to be the major threats for that. And the 82% of the people acknowledge that the the community-led initiative shows a very, very important for the protection of those species. And the most importantly, what we understood from this thing is like the youth engagement and knowledge transfer seems to be very pathetic, and integration of traditional and scientific conservation seems to be a very, very necessity for especially the region like a Kalroyan Hills. And community-led conservation initiative is really needed for the protection of the important sacred groves. And obviously that will help with the climate change adaptation as well as the sustainable livelihood of the local people. Then as part of our third objectives, we also conserve some of the important endemic and threatened plants. As you can see, Santalum album, which I have shown as one of the IUCN red listed plant, and also Rubia cordifolia and so on. So all those plants we try to grow under laboratory condition to protect and conserve, because very minimal number of species are available. So we have made the conservation for that. And most importantly, to uplift the tribal community, we have restored very, very important threatened plants. And also we gave a lot of awareness program to develop the socio-economic development. And here you can see the villages, and these are all some of the species, plant species that we have, replanted and restored them, and as a to grow them as a vrikshavali. Almost 10 villages out of 15 hills that we have covered. And here you can see some of the sample pictures. And in addition to that, we have also done lots of awareness program with young generation, focus mainly given to the young generation, because they are not interested to shown to protect or conserve the sacred groves. And awareness
Sorry
program.
for interrupting, Mr. Professor Siva. You have 1 minute.
Yeah, sure. So these are all some of the awareness program that we have conducted, and we also prepare the module, as I was mentioning, along with that our collaborator from BOO. So this is the GBF targets and SDG goal for our thing. And the most important aspect is the outcome is, we made a lot of restoration and also conservation. So this is the last slide for my lecture. And this case study can give direct as well as indirect nexus benefit. So the direct benefit including terrestrial biodiversity conservation and sustainable use of medicinal plants, and as a result it can improve the human health. And indirect nexus benefit can improve the water quality, soil health, and it can also reduce the soil erosion. As a result, it can also increase the soil carbon storage. Whatever that we have done in the Kalrain Hills was appeared in the newspaper, local newspaper. Just I am showing the glimpse of that. And we also, as an academic institute, VIT is academic institute. So we also do the research and most focus on research. So we publish the manuscripts a lot. And in fact, one of the outcome of this work is communicated to Journal of Nature Conservation. I thank Satoyama SDM as well as IPBES for the wonderful opportunity. I thank you, each one of you, for your patience listening. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siva, for interesting presentations. So it was focused more from the scientific way, and then the cascading effect of the degradation of cyclic growth was very interesting, affecting all those nexus elements. So let's move to the next session. So we are going to have a panel discussion now, inviting the prominent speakers. So first of all, let me introduce Dr. Diana Mangalaju. She's a professor at the University of Oxford in UK, and also Neoma Business School in France. And then also Dr. Osamu Saito. He's from IPBES, and the program director of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Service Unit. And then Dr. Diana and Dr. Osamu are also coordinating lead authors of IPBES Nexus assessment. So they are experts on this field. And then also, yes, Dr. Siva, and then from Belo Institute of Technology, and then Dr. Yao, they are also here. So inviting all these speakers, we're going to have a discussion. So first of all, I'd like to ask Diana and Osamu about their impressions and thoughts from these presentations. And after that, I also like ask you if you have any questions to them, but first, please share your impressions, thoughts, please.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here and to participate in this session. Thank you very much for the introduction by Takeuchi-san and then by the two, Dr. Siva and Dr. Yao. And well, it's wonderful actually to see after 4 years of work on the Nexus assessment, how very concretely in specific projects, both in Ghana and in India, you have approached and put at work this framing. So it's really interesting to see in terms of how you identified the different response options and family of the response options which make sense in your space and in the projects you are taking on board. Also, you mentioned quite a number of things in terms of Nexus governance. I'm going to come back to that. So yeah, I would say for the moment, I mean, in some ways, it's almost warm-hearting to see, you know, what we have done applied in such a ground-up way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Diana. So Osamu, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. First of all, before Nexus, actually, I also involved the very initial Satoyama assessment in Japan from 2005-6 to 2010. And I was also in charge of the defining SEPLS, actually. So we also spent a lot of time to how to define socio-ecological production landscapes. So dynamic mosaic of the landscape which produce bundle of the ecosystem services. Those are, yeah, we worked a lot. And also the Koji also show the illustration of the Satoyama and the Satomi. Actually, that slide that illustration also, I was in charge to create. I did not create by myself, but I instructed the illustrator to create that illustration. But I'm very glad to see that illustration is still used to explain the Satoyama and Satomi concept. But anyway, I'm also being involved in the project in Ghana for nearly 10 years in the past. And also I coincidentally had a chance to stay Tamil Nadu for 3 months when I was a master's student. But yeah, it was a long time ago. But yeah, today's presentation, I really appreciate both Dr. Yao and Dr. Shiba's presentation. And I was very surprised to they already uptake Nexus approach concept into their actual practices on the ground. And actually, I really want to know this one before our Nexus, assessment. We would like to utilize your case study into our chapter, or yeah, exactly, so that you can utilize more your case studies, or maybe promote your case studies at global scale. But anyway, yeah, thank you very much to putting all the effort to align Nexus approach with your concrete examples. That was really, really impressive. And also that makes a lot of sense. And the Nexus assessment report is a bit abstract because it's collecting all different case studies from, and also we reviewed more than 1,000 of the literature reviews. But we need to kind of generalize the outcome. So I think that what we produced is a bit abstract, and it's a bit, we didn't have much concrete examples. We tried to include the concrete example as much as possible, but in the end, we kind of generalized. So I think now the issue is how to kind of connect on-the-ground actions and our assessment work. And this is a great opportunity to see the concrete example of how we can understand the Nexus approach in the context and different contexts, like medicinal plants and also the forest restoration and also non-timber forest products, and also the women's empowerment things. So these are really the interesting and also well connected, which provide positive impact on the 5 Nexus elements. It was summarized very nicely in both in Ghana and also India. So these are really, really the interesting case studies we would like to actually use. If there's available before the assessment, I would like to really use those examples in our chapter. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Osam, for sharing your views and also experiences in their countries. So now I'd like you to share some questions. So now you share quite positive views on them, but now you might be a bit more critical if it's necessary. If you have any questions to them in India and Ghana, any questions, please?
Absolutely. So first, I'm gonna have specific questions for each of the case studies in Ghana and in India, and then I have some common questions for both cases. And well, you pick and choose, as times allows, and whatever you find the most interesting points to make afterwards, please. So for Dr. Yao and Pamela, 2 questions. You mentioned the cost of adoption, which was one of the problems and the remaining challenges, which was something you kind of, was in your closing remarks. So that was one. And one very specific point, you talked about opinion leaders and then about women workers, and, and question of empowerment. And I was wondering if the opinion leaders, are we talking about female opinion leaders? You know, we've seen some pictures which both you have both genders there. So I was wondering, you know, how the power relations work in that space. So, and for Dr. Siva, also two questions. You are mentioning, you know, basically the pressure created by the Ayurveda usage of the medicinal plants, which are coming from the Eastern Ghats. And actually, by the way, I spent quite a lot of time in Tamil Nadu and in Eastern Ghats. So I'm quite familiar with that part of the country. And I was wondering if at any point in time, did you engage not only with the producers, but with the, you know, I don't know, with the producers of the medication for the Ayurvedic products, you know, because basically demand side, not necessarily the supply side. And one question also specifically, you're talking about population decline, but my question is that due to the degradation, you know, which you see, you know, in the sacred groves, or is that mostly linked to the fact that young generations, they kind of disconnect from, you know, in terms of beliefs and attitude, etc., and they, you know, you have these aspirations of being more moved on towards the urban spaces. And just to conclude, questions for both of the project and the game. Don't feel obliged at all to answer all of this. Well, first question, both you mentioned Nexus governance and, you know, with the different dimensions, but I would like to know how more concretely, you know, what does it mean on the ground? You know, when you talk about, you know, the holistic approach, the inclusiveness, the adaptivity, etc., equity, I mean, did you really manage to use, you know, a Nexus governance approach when you looked around in that space? And finally, another question for both. Once the project is done, how do you sustain, how are you making sure that, you know, this is continuing? You know, action on the ground. Thank you very much. And maybe, you know, Osamu, you also add your questions, and then people pick whatever it's possible. So I don't know how you want, you moderate,
Yeah.
so you decide.
Yeah, you can decide.
So Osamu, you have relevant questions, or maybe we can ask them if they can answer first.
Okay, so I would like to ask two common questions. So you two both nicely summarized the benefit provided by your actions to the 5 Nexus elements: biodiversity, water, food, climate, health. And then in Ghana case, I think there is one table which summarizes all the benefit provided to these Nexus elements, 5 Nexus elements. But at the same time, I would like to know any potential trade-offs you faced, including 5 Nexus elements, but also you can consider the other elements which may have trade-off between your action, promoting your actions may have degrade the other dimensions, etc. So if you face any trade-off in the process of your activities, I would like to know. So my second question is also that we emphasize the coordination of the multiple stakeholders or actors to implement Nexus approach. So in your case, I think that you are the key person to coordinating and leading, I guess. But yeah, in addition to yourself, is there any key actors to promote Nexus approach? So these are two questions I would like to ask. And if time remain, I will give additional questions. But I think that will be enough for starting.
Okay, thank you very much, Diana and then Osam, for the interesting questions. So we have many interesting questions, but let's ask Yao and then Pamela first. Do you have any questions that you want to address? Opinion leaders or benefits, key actors, and so on.
Yeah, there are a few questions that we'll address, and Pamela is around here to support in making the issues more clearer to everyone. The first is that let me put on records that my belief in the Nexus was my association with this initiative over the period. We have been in Japan, we have been associated with this for a long time. And when I studied the Nexus approach, I realized that it is the same approach that we have locally, except that it didn't have that name. So I thought that that was the best. Unfortunately, during the time, big production systems were coming in place, and therefore they were ignoring the Nexus approach. So when I came in and I saw that, look, we need to go back to ensure that the health of the ecosystem is maintained. That is when I became the apostle of Nexus. And since then, I've always been promoting this initiative because I believe, how do we get communities to adopt? Every community in Ghana has a leader. And apart from few cases where the leaders are women, for most of the cases, the leaders are men. They are traditional leaders. Of course, you may get a woman representative in the council, but often it's all men. So they become the first entry point. Any community that you go to, you must have an information about the community. You can get the information through research. Some work that have been done will give you information about the community. You can get the information from churches, for example. You can get it from opinion leaders. You can get it from local government. So that's always the first point of call. Make sure you have information about the communities before you enter. That will help you to know what to do and what not to do. That will help you to abide by their traditional mode of entry. You don't just jump into a community. So after we've done that, the good news is that we've been in this landscape for a long time, since 2006. After we have done a biological assessment of the forest, we have the documents are online. Then we thought that this is an area where we need to ensure that production systems, cultural practices, and social cultural activities are in line to preserve the health of that ecosystem, because it's unique within the Guinean forest landscape and it's endemic to some species. So it's important that we protect this. So when you go to the community, the first point is to go and see the chief and the traditional leaders and inform them of your mission. And because you have gotten good background information of the area, you dress appropriately. And then often when you are going, you know what to take along. A bottle of a drink, local drink or schnapp into the chief's palace. And then you speak through the linguists. So before you even meet the head, the linguist will give you information about how to approach the king. When you have shown whatever you are going to do, what your purpose, then he will give you the go-ahead, green light that go. Then that's when you find the leader of the group that you are going to work with. And most communities have groups, women groups, men groups, and all that. Our focus was on women groups. Unfortunately, they tend to be weak governance-wise. One, they may not have a defined constitution to guide their operation. And so when you come in, that's when you need to help them. Again, their operation may also not be defined. And that they may not even have access to other opportunities out there. They may not know. So once you are in there, you are going to help them, one, to document their governance system, two, to link them up to other actors within the landscape, private actors, government extension agents, other NGOs or community-based organizations that are also working there. So you are going to link these groups to this. and then you link them to markets. Once you link them to market, it means that their production system will not stay the same. They will need to abide by certain protocols so that their production doesn't harm the ecosystem. That is the only way by which they can get premium from what they are producing. So that's the first mode. Then again, you must look at the other options. Probably they are producing one commodity because they don't know the markets. There may be additional or new commodities which they can produce to enhance the household income. And if the landscape permits it, then you introduce it. Additionally, then you need to, agroforestry is key. They may not be doing that because they think that when they incorporate agroforestry into the system, they don't get what you do. So if you want speedy adoption of practices by the women in the target, the men, the husbands as well. Once the husband is knowledgeable and appreciate what the wives, the sisters are doing, the rate of adoption is always very high. If the males don't accept the initiative, the chances are that adoption among the women will be low. So whilst we are working with the women, we also make sure that we enhance the knowledge and skill and appreciation of what we are doing among the male counterparts. That way they will push the women who are primarily responsible for food production to adopt. So that's how we handle that one. Yeah, we use the Nexus approach because you see, in the past, projects are focused on one element of activity, production. No, we ensure that we look at all the elements of the landscape so that if we are producing a commodity and then we want to use fertilizer, what is the impact on the rivers, for example? What is the impact of a particular chemical on any of the species? So we look at all that. We don't concentrate on one element. We see the impact of all that on these. And for us, the most important way to sustain it is linking them to market. So after you've gone, there is a market to which they will sell the commodities to. And once the market is supporting them, they will always continue to produce according to the system that you have put in place. Again, you must have a very strong leadership and periodically help them to document everything and link them to extension agents within the area and the local government. Once they are linked to these elements, any opportunity that comes, they will be able to access. And that's one way that we can sustain the initiative. And above all, I said there are other actors within the landscape, and then you have to link them up. So that's that for me for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yo. So now I'd like to ask Shiba to answer some questions, but you're also receiving some questions from the audience. So, for example, is there a role for gender equality in enhancing?
I gone through Koji. Yeah, I have gone through. Let me answer. Yeah, first of all, once again, thank you for this great opportunity, and thanks to Professor Diana from Oxford University, and thanks to Professor Saito. And in fact, it's very interesting to know that Professor Saito was in Tamil Nadu, and he was here for 3 months, I think, a few years back. That's very interesting. So I think he might have aware about the biodiversity of Tamil Nadu, or most importantly, the cultural diversity. Before answering to that, I want to mention that, Professor Saito will agree with me that India is a so huge, so big country. We have regional based or cultural is different from northern part of India to the southern part of India. Well, I have received so many questions, both from Professor Diana as well as from Professor Saito. In addition to that, some of the participants have also raised a few questions. So let me try to answer one by one. So in fact, when started, Professor Diana mentioned about the Ayurvedic plants that been, used many tribals, and because of that, there is a decline. In India, in fact, as I mentioned in my lecture, the 3 or 4 medicinal practices quite common. One is Ayurveda, second one is Siddha, third one is Unani, and fourth one is homeopathy. Even though homeopathy is a German-based one, but quite popular in India than German today, even though it is originated from German. And among all 4 traditional medicine, Ayurvedic is considered as one of the oldest medicinal technique. And in fact, this is the practice which is based on directly using the plants. And there are so many plants which is actually being diminishing because of the local people need. Say, for example, like I mentioned in one of the slides about the Rubia tinctoria or Waldenlandia umbellata. So these plants are being used for snake bites, and which is having antivenom property. In fact, this is a very rich with the biodiversity. And when all in sudden at dark or even at the daytime when snake bites, they cannot take the patients from the hill station to the ground and to get treat. And the immediate rescue for them is using the medicinal plants. So the roots of Rubia cordifolia having the antivenom property, like that, there are many plants which known to have. So they cut the, what do you call the root? As you know, when you cut the roots, it's very, very difficult to restore them by naturally, unless otherwise, if it is germinating properly. So that's, we feel like, one of the reason is like, the domestic use, or let's say like for the treatment of the issues like a snake bites or insects bites or the other health related people are using. And now there was a question related whether the producers or the supply of the natural product people are also approaching. This is another very important and very threatening. In fact, even though there is a huge legal and the strategies being formed for the usage of Ayurvedic plants and collect from the biodiversity law in India, but despite that, as you know, some of the encroachment and unofficially or illegally collecting the leaf material or the plant material, being supplying them to the Ayurvedic people is another way of earning money for them. And because of that, again, there can be a huge threat for the biodiversity law. So biodiversity loss. So this is a very, very important thing. And most importantly, the another thing is these are all some of the things which people are utilizing by them. But unfortunately, main reason for the depletion of this viable or valuable medicinal plant is because of the mining. Because the government wants to enhance the road expansion or maybe for the tourist sort of things. And as a result, the expansion of the road and urbanization and construction of the building and lodging and so on. So that's making the more mining. And to because of the mining and other thing, there will be the depletion of the biodiversity loss is there. The second question which was asked by Professor Diana was about the young generation, why they are migrating. Again, because for the salary hike or, for the survival, better survival, because in the rural, especially this Kalrayan region is more tribal people and scheduled tribe are there. And the poor education, poor transport, and of course, there is not proper electricity. If there is a huge rain or continuous rain for a few days, they won't get any sort of power supply. The people will come and rectify only after a week and other things. So because of that, people wants to migrate. And another very important thing is like, mining, as I say, like is one of the reasons. So people lost their land and other thing, and people are coming towards the city for their survival. So that's the one of the reason people are migrating. And most importantly, they are not much belief or myth with the practice of the older generation, because it is not scientifically validated that, by providing the food to the sacred groves or doing this sort of practice will help their life and other thing. They do not believe in that. So this is another unfortunate thing. And because of that, the younger generation is focusing more for the stable lifestyle. And that's why they are migrating from the hill station to or the tribal region to the to the city. And
Dr. Siba, sorry for interruption. So due to the limited time, can you try to integrate all the questions
Wow.
and then maybe wrap up
okay.
Yeah.
So
maybe your key message, the message that you want to share the most.
Okay. So
Sorry.
what my suggestion, what my important thing is like, in fact, sacred grove is one such important role of biodiversity to hold. But unfortunately, this sort of sacred groves are losing. But the most important point here is like only few countries in the world known to have the sacred groves. Many of the people doesn't know even the word called sacred groves. So only in certain countries where they have, even in Japan, people believing with the snakes and as a worship. So like that, only few region in the world known to have the sacred grove, and this is the time to protect and conserve the sacred groves that obviously will contribute to the biodiversity of the things, which is obviously connect with the all. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siba. And so in this session, we try to integrate the theories and practice, and then so especially seeing the cases from Ghana and India applying the SEPLS. So I think we are able to witness this linkage, and then it was possible to see how much Nexus approach was used in their project. So we'd like to close this panel discussion. So thank you very much to all the panelists. And at last, I'd like to invite the Mr. Hideki Kawai, Deputy Director of Biodiversity Strategy Office, Nature Conservation Bureau at the Ministry of Environment, Japan. So Mr. Hideki Kawai, please, over to you.
I'm Hideki Kawai from the Ministry of the Environment of Japan. I'd like to begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to the Professor Takeuchi, President of IPBES, and all the distinguished speakers for sharing on-the-ground cases, challenges, and opportunities as well as for your lively discussion. I would also like to express my sincere appreciation to all the participants. And through the informative presentations, I found many good examples of Nexus approach in SEPLS activities to sustainable use and manage their landscapes and seascapes. I think that the key challenge moving forward will be how to expand the insights of the approach to achieve better management of SEPLS, bearing in mind the collaboration of various stakeholders as emphasized by the landscape approaches. The Satoyama Initiative has focused on the SEPLS and has accumulated good use cases and insights regarding the sustainable use and conservation of natural resources. Japan would like to actively learn and utilize these experiences for the implementation of our NLD SAP to contribute to the achievement of the GBF. To continue and expand such efforts, I would like to utilize this. I would like to invite everyone to join the force. The International Partnership for the Satoyama Initiative, or IPBES, is a platform to facilitate collaborations and information sharing among members. I hope that more organizations will participate in this partnership for a sustainable future. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kawai. So we are now closing this session. And so after closing this session, you will receive a questionnaire for this session. So it's appreciated if you could answer those. And then this session will be uploaded on YouTube. So if you go to the registration page of this website, you can see the recording at YouTube. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Bye.